Hello and welcome to the Queermonge Institute, our Q&A Conversation for Exploration series. I'm Paul Robert, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, and along with my wife Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach, and of course on behalf of our Board of Directors, advisors, volunteers, and supporting members, we want to thank you for joining us today. The Queermonge Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness and the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist, Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And as an educational institution, we recognize that to thrive, we must take an open approach. So we invite scholars in related fields to help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration. That's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. On these weekly Sunday discussions, we've had a full spectrum of topics from the arts to the sciences and everything in between, and we invite you to visit our website at queermongeinstitute.com. All of our presentations are free, and as a nonprofit, we invite you to become a supporting member, and we want to thank you, the community members who continue to support the mission of the Queermonge Institute. Today, let's look at the growth and the latest developments in the world of virtual reality, with its ability for us to feel we're immersed in an alternate reality that feels very, very real. And now, everywhere in the news, you see this term Metaverse, which builds on the concept of virtual reality and expands the idea of a shared, inclusive, virtual universe. And before you dismiss this as some sort of gaming distraction, our guest today will share a much broader application of the metaverse. Of course, the corporate world is already embracing this opportunity for business, but there remains a very promising opportunity for us using this as a platform for the betterment of humanity. The metaverse has dramatic implications that cause us to find a role in shaping this emerging digital world. What if the metaverse can create direct experiences to learn and to take us beyond traditional educational platforms? It will, and it already does. Because at some point in the near future, this means that the line between surfing the internet and using virtual reality is likely to become very blurred. And referring back to us, this institute now has almost 50 years of experience and has been focused on the internal universe of the human experience. And when we talk about the alternate reality, what we're referencing is that full capacity of the human experience, which is reflected throughout history. We could see the metaverse application in which it mirrors the internal dynamics of our soul and psyche. So for me, if asked the question, how far back can we find evidence of the metaverse? It could go back into the ancestors sitting in a cave, watching the flickering flames of fire reflecting on the cave walls. Trust me, external virtual reality experiences alone will never fulfill or replace the human need for a fully developed internal landscape and personal, peaceful soul. It's a tool. The question is, what will we do with it?
The news reports have been alerting us for months now that the metaverse is on its way and it's the next big wave. And I think it's just been waiting for the rollout of 5G's faster speeds and higher bandwidth capacity to make it viable. And, I just don't want to leave it to business, right? Some of the news reporters, I was a little dismayed when they're asked, well, what is this metaverse going to give us? And one reporter said, well, when you're walking down the street, you've got your metaverse glasses on, you can go glance into a shop window and see what's there and the prices and the goods. And I'm like, it's not just for making us better consumers. How about making us better citizens of the universe? Mm-hmm. How about the educational? Then you can get me excited about that. Armchair traveling. Where can I go in 3D? With an accompanying soundscape or smellscape. Right. Activate my senses in many ways. Can I walk through a museum? Ancient ruins? The ascent up Everest? Witness a total eclipse of the sun? Can I walk through the interior layers of an atom? down a wormhole to the other end of our galaxy? Can they finally explain theoretical physics with interactive models and computer simulations of, say, superstrings and the Big Bang so we can finally understand it? Will I be reading meta books by jumping into the page? Can I go on holiday on a holodeck a la Star Trek? Or for my workout, choose between surfing or skiing or hiking the Alps, all in my living room? Can I attend meetings with a group on the other side of the world and interact more fully than we do with our Zooms today?
Yeah.
Would it be like sitting in the same room instead of seeing everyone else's living rooms? And here's a question of particular interest to us in this institute. Can I take you on a tour through the alternate reality as we experience it?
Right.
As I enter into a multi-dimensional, and I mean truly multi-dimensional landscape, and its sensory roller coaster ride, as colors and geometrics and faces appear and disappear, as this avatar experience for us as an energy body, a dream body, expands, contracts, grows into the tree of life, sees through the eyes of a bird, flies over wondrous landscapes, dives deep into Mother Earth, dances with the ancestors, dissolves into nothingness to be reborn. Can I take you there? Can I attend group meditations as some of my friends are? Can we test theories that we are recreating in an outer way what we already own internally, but perhaps it's set aside in our relentless pursuit of outer technology? Well, we have a couple of guides here today. And I want to thank Bernie Bateman for this. Bernie has been a guest talking about coincidence on this forum, and he invited us as a guest on his podcast along with our guest today, so that's how we met. And these are guests who say, I want to prove to the science-minded that there is spirit, and offer this to the spiritually minded a path to infuse humanity into technology. We have with us today Dhamindra Jeevan. We call him G. He's a digital matte painter for many a Hollywood sci-fi movie, as well as Christa Mariah, his partner in life and the Metaverse. She's an executive guide and coach for entrepreneurship and creativity. That's what she teaches as an adjunct professor at Florida Gulf Coast University. And they are here creating a spiritual room in this metaverse. They call it the Treeverse, to really roll out life lessons, to roll out the spiritual components, and make sure that there's a placeholder in this metaverse for the eternal questions and skills of life. They join us from Vancouver, British Columbia. Hello and welcome. Good to have you here.
Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Well, they recently took a tour through our world Saturday, and they gave us a tour of their world yesterday as well. So we are versed in each other's worlds, and we're going to find many points of comparison between them. But first, tell us what brought you to the metaverse. Of course, you're high tech. This would be just part of your natural terrain. What is your goal with the metaverse? And explain what the metaverse is in language we can all understand.
Sure, thank you. For the metaverse, I'm actually going to ask you, Krista. You explain it much better than I do usually.
Thank you. Well, I would say, Laura, you did an amazing job just with the illustrative language that you used and the scenarios that you spelled out. I was already there. To make it really simple, meta means essentially beyond and bigger, right? And versus it's the connection of all of these worlds. So it's beyond that, though. It is, as some may say, Web3 or the spatial web. But really, to me, it's just the ability to make the invisible visible and persistent and give everyone a peek inside our own worlds.
The spatial. So they're adding another dimension. This 3D experience is really to walk around in a space and experience perceptually, as we do this reality, is a key component of that. And it really does take this 5G bandwidth to connect us all. I mean, a lot of this technology has been kind of played with in a gaming situation, but now it's rolled out for everyone. And I kind of liken this to the cloud, right? When you first heard about, well, everything's going to be in the cloud and it's got to live on your own computer, we're all going to be in the cloud. It was a weird concept, but now we're all using it. Yeah. And so these technological breakthroughs, even the phone, what do we need a phone for? To walk around with our phone was the first question. And here we all are attached and tethered to them. So do you see it in that same vein, that this is going to be as commonplace an aspect to our digital realms?
I personally do. I see it almost as an inevitability, because we've been creating all of the parts of a fragmented machine being all this time. We created speaker phones to replace the mouth so we could transport our voices further. We created cameras to replace our eyes so we can take snapshots of reality. We created microphones to replace the ear canal so we could record sounds. We moved on, we created computers to replace the head, compute. And we created Wi-Fi, which gave us the cloud, which allowed us to transport invisible thoughts in the air and gather data.
Our telepathy at large.
Telepathy. Yeah. When I was very young, like telepathy was the main thing. As a kid, I was waiting for. I'm like, how come we can't speak in each other's minds? How come we like ESP was a really, really big thing. Mm-hmm. And now at this age, what I realize is that we have been creating ESP. We've been creating a mechanical form of telepathy. And the one thing that we're not born with telepathy is that our third eye, the one that keeps all of our information, is hidden inside our minds. Mm-hmm. So we can't go around reading other people's thoughts and being intrusive. But now we've created all the other parts of technology without the third eye, and we're trying to intrude into people's lives with privacy.
Make it more immersive, at least.
So that there's a big blurry blend between technology and what we're doing to the planet, what we're doing to each other, what we're doing in commerce, and this nonstop busyness that you talked about. Like, it's already been used to promote business, which is just us being busy without knowing what we're busy for, where we're going, what we're doing. It's like
if there's space, we're going to fill it up.
Just filling it up. Yeah, it's just filling it up with this energy that we don't know what to do with. And that's why a lot of people now are traveling inwards to find out who they really are before they continue with their busyness. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the metaverse and all of this emergence is about that. It's about, we finally created something to go inside our minds and to look at what's inside there for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. We would argue that's been there all along, but
it has been
now
there
we can do it in a mechanized way, and perhaps have some shared space to really explore in that dimension. That seems to be your mission. What is your personal mission with the metaverse? What do you hope to create there?
Mine is to honestly to harmonize technology so that it serves all living beings. It's almost like our collective unconscious created this technology, and we haven't freed it so that it frees everyone else yet. It's like we have an unlock key in our hands with smartphones now, and we haven't actually used it for what it's meant to do. We're using it to calculate, to do all this other stuff, but it's meant for something much deeper. It's meant to free humanity in my eyes.
So Bill Halal would agree with you with the global consciousness. Like, we have the infrastructure, let's do something purposeful and a higher purpose with it. Christa.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, in addition to the connection, is transforming education into edutainment. We have the technology and the potential to actually make everything fun, make our learning fun, make our working fun, and doing that in a way that is creative and gives people tools to create that they just never had access to before. And that's part of this convergence of technologies. In addition to the 5G, we also have now blockchain technologies which help to essentially help everyone to be sovereign as their own individual, but also create a more global community without a lot of the restrictions around country borders, and that the conflict that happens with our traditional or older previous version of the banking and financial systems. So blockchain, cloud, 5G, and now AR, VR, XR. XR is the term that covers, virtual reality and augmented reality and any other kind of external realities that we can all share besides our own internal technology.
So there's a tremendous potential here. You said edutainment. The senses are, when their senses are involved, we learn so much better, right? Not just through our intellect, not just through words, but you can really engage more fully. That is just how we learn in our world. We're given these senses for a purpose, so those can be harnessed. Also, I see technology as neutral. It just depends on the intent we have to use it, right? So I know you have a few cautionary notes, what you don't want to see. Let's get those out of the way and then talk about its potential. And then I want to know each of your background and a little bit deeper into what you're bringing to the table. But first, let's get the cautionary notes out of the way.
Sure.
Yeah. What are the dangers that you're seeing with this?
You want to go with the dangers?
Yeah, and I don't know if it makes sense to share. We've got a couple of slides that can help illustrate. I didn't focus on the dangers, but if anyone's seen any of the dystopian future sci-fi movies, Ready Player One's actually a really good one that's kind of partially dystopian, partially on the positive. But I would say, the cautionary is like, don't get sucked into the technology and forget about everything else. There's been stories of people, feeding their little augmented animals on their phones, but not feeding their actual children. So there's that. But if we think about too, the cautionary, that was my biggest fear going into the metaverse was when Second Life came out. That was probably one of the first, what I would say is iterations of these virtual worlds that you can actually go in and make a life in and have commerce in and do all the things that you do in normal life. I was really afraid of that when it first came out. I was like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to get sucked into it. And also when I got my first VR headset, usually with technology, I'm super excited. I can't wait to unbox it and get in and explore and figure it out. But with the VR headset, it was a different experience. It took me like 2 days to actually open it out of the box and look at it and then feel it, because there was this innate fear of getting trapped inside and not having all of the benefits of my physical reality. So those are a couple of things I would say to start. But what happened, just to alleviate that concern, with the current technology, the headsets, they are difficult to wear for more than 90 minutes. It is, there are some things right now that kind of help curb that potential for addiction. And as we evolve, the technology will evolve too. Like you talked about this holodeck idea, the mixed reality XR, I think that will also kind of bring us in more, immerse us more. But that's also why we're doing the work we're doing right now, so that we can be able to find our bearings and not get sucked in.
Right. I would also add to that, we have enough mass distractions in the world. When are we ever going to pay attention to our own inner garden and tend to it? Can this help us do that? Can we pay attention to the soul speaking to us and needing its me time with us? Right. And can we tend to some work? We've got to roll up our sleeves and get this planet back on track, get our society back on track. And this dystopian, while it's entertaining, this dystopian picture, if that's all you put in front of yourself, that's what you think you're going to build your reality of. That's what you're seeing and building. Why not put some positive and a path out to the world that we all want to live in? Let's visualize that and see if we can build that And why isn't the positive, the healing, more entertaining? Make it so. Make it intriguing. Make it enticing, so we can start to put that in front of our eyes and build it. That would be mine.
It'd be interesting to see if we can
Let's spend some time in nature, right? That's a healing presence as well. Go ahead.
Maintaining a balance between the two, because as researching and getting prepared for today's discussion was this anxiety about youngsters getting so dependent on it that if the power goes out, they don't even know how to live life. I mean, there's so much, they're so dependent on
You'd be blowing ourselves back to the
virtual
Stone Age.
reality is their only reality, and they haven't learned how to function in this reality again. So there has to be an integration.
Yeah. Thank you. Well spoken.
I would say the same thing, Paul. I would say my fear was in a very meta level. And for me, I look at the word meta as just big picture view, like the highest picture view we can look at. And my almost stubborn shtick is that everything is connected, no matter how ridiculous it seems. Because of my background as an artist, I still see invisible threads. You can take two things that you would say are completely opposite, and I link them by being opposite. I link them by their opposite symmetrical attributes. So meta view, everything's connected. And my real concern, I've been ranting about this for about 15 years now, and it's only now that I'm calm about it, but it was the unconscious fragmentation of humanity. It's like not just our minds, our hearts are being fragmented, our bodies are being fragmented.
Our knowledge is fragmented.
Knowledge is fragmented, everything. But there's one thing to fragment something consciously, which means opening it up and giving it space, breathing room, or breaking out of our bodies is a fragmentation as well, just so we can explore and come back to it. But unconsciously doing it has caused a lot of problems. And then that unconscious compulsive search has also ended up in technology, in our movies, in our writings, in our video games. And I see it almost like warnings from the future about what could happen. It's just like the imagination going into, what if this terrible thing happened, or what if that terrible thing happened? And I saw Terminator 2 when I was 13 years old. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, we can't let that happen. We can't.
Well, even Arnold was wearing those glasses that would feed him information about what he was seeing. So that's a precursor of this technology, isn't it?
It is.
The holodeck on Star Trek. I mean, we've been imagining, like my dad always used to say, well, he grew up with Dick Tracy in the comics.
Right.
And he's like, well, one of these days, kids, you'll be wearing this phone, wearing this thing on your wrist. And indeed, Apple Watch, right?
Yeah.
So we imagine it in sci-fi before we invent it, don't we?
We do.
The imagination is so key. And if we're just fed with other people's imaginings, when are we going to stir up our own? So that is a vital muscle that we also need to keep alive and active and perceiving. So
it's so straightforward to me in terms of like where your eyes look every day. It's like, where do your eyes focus? What is your gaze on? Do you close your eyes and go inwards? Do you only look forward? Are you only looking for other people's visions? Do you create your own? And our eye gazing is now completely fixated on our phones. To me, we went from theater, where we all gathered together and watched other human beings tell a story that we would connect to or not. And then it went from theater to movie theater, where those people didn't have to be there anymore. They could film themselves and just repeat their vision over and over. And then we went to Blockbuster, where we stopped going and gathering in groups, and we would watch those visions at home. And then we went to Netflix, where we don't even go to Blockbuster anymore. We just stay at home. And this kept on going to Instagram, YouTube, and now it's on our faces. So for me, it's like technology is just approaching us, and it's approaching us and encroaching on our space, but it's trying to show us something.
Well, you could also dial that back to the, sitting around the campfire 50,000 years ago, spinning the mythologies,
Yeah.
and how the bards of old would memorize 1,000-line stanzas of epic dramas. Then they would tell, they would sing, they would act out, and it would all occur in our imagination, right? We would see it because they were so skilled at conveying it and telling the story. So I see that is what the movie today is taking that place. We've been so want to sit around in the evening and share stories.
And share stories and connect.
And then we're still doing that
We're
with
still
this
doing that.
technology. In fact, this is your profession. We want to hear about that as well. You're going to show us some. And Christa, creativity and entrepreneurship, that's what we're all engaged in, whether we know it or not, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. We've both been in like very lucky because we grew up in this time, and I was fortunate enough to make a living painting and drawing. I started in engineering, but quickly looked at all these engineers that were driving cabs around me, telling me, don't finish your degree, like get out and just do what you love to do.
Don't rack up that big debt. Yeah.
Don't rack up that big debt. And I was, I came from another country. So my culture was all, you got to be a doctor or an engineer. That's it. You got two choices. You better study hard and have a good reputation. You better do something of service in the world and make a lot of money doing it. So that was the only thing I was like pushed towards. And I didn't care for any of it. So
you were born in Sri Lanka. Tell us your life journey. And Christa,
Sure.
you have a unusual childhood as well, but tell us your origin story in brief.
Sure. Christa, I don't know if we're not loading up the screen yet, but we can screen share it. Oh yeah, okay, great. Do you want to go straight to the intro or?
Yeah, well, we kind of already talked about what is the metaverse, right? We've got a couple of slides just to illustrate the background here, but I think the biggest takeaway is essentially it's not as scary as a lot of people think. It's, regular people can jump in there and see how we transcend beyond what's currently there with Web 2. And we've got the opportunity essentially to create our own worlds. They actually did, NYU received a grant in 2016 to build out the holodeck, so that there is work in progress. A lot of universities are taking on this challenge of developing these next level technologies that we've seen in sci-fi movies, which I kind of see as documentaries. If we're eternal beings, then, and there's multiple iterations, that's a theory. I kind of see it as these are different iterations of what could be. And we're in this time now, all co-creating together, the opportunity and the reality that we want to see. So quickly, just on the metaverse too, I spent 6 years at Gartner, which is the world's largest research and advisory firm for IT professionals. And now they serve all executive roles with research, and they have what's called a hype cycle. So every new technology that comes out goes through this. Essentially, there's some sort of innovation trigger. You come up this kind of peak of inflated expectations, everybody hypes it up, you get to the top, and then money starts pouring in. It doesn't quite pan out to the expectations that are set. You go down this trough of disillusionment. We're kind of in that space right now with, if you guys heard the hype around NFTs, non-fungible tokens that are traded on blockchain. I also saw earlier someone had a question of the definition of blockchain. It's essentially just a transparent online ledger. So essentially everyone can see what's going on in these transactions all over the world. So you look at these technologies, just to come back here quickly, every technology goes through this hype cycle. As you work through and innovate and evolve these different bugs and the things that aren't working, then you go up the slope of enlightenment, and then you start to get to a plateau of productivity. So Gartner does that research. I was lucky to spend 6 years there, as I said, from sales to leaving as the director of planning and integration, reporting to the chief information security officer. So I've had a lot of really interesting experiences through that. image behind Gartner here is Island 17. And Island 17 is a Brown University project that is in the making of creating a metaverse island that you can go in and explore, and then actually do real world games that are contributing to solving some of the 17 sustainability goals that the UN has set out. So imagine going into this island and there is like a cleanup on the beach. So there's a game that, you know, shows you how to clean up the beach and gives you these different facts about the garbage in the ocean. And then in the game, you set up a real life meetup to go clean up at the beach. And when you check in at that beach cleanup, you get points that translate into currency that you can use on the island to do different things, whether it's playing games or building your avatar or connecting with other people or actually getting paid as your jobs. So there's a lot of different things that are in production right now that are going to be coming out really, really quickly. The future is faster than you think. That's a really good book.
The future is faster than you think.
Yeah.
So with that, there's your very brief metaverse overview, and then I'll let you talk a little bit.
Thank you. That was very instructive.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Christa. I also wanted to add for Tony, I believe you asked about blockchain, how it relates to the metaverse. I see it from a meta view, a top view. All of these concepts that are coming out now, blockchain, NFTs, to me, they're just reflections of community. They're just reflections of how human beings act. So like this ledger of a blockchain, which says that if one ledger is off or messed with, it breaks the entire chain and the whole thing goes off. That to me is like being in community, where you're in a village with many people, and then you find out that one person in the village is not who they say they're going to be, and the entire village is now on alert. It's a very similar principle to trust versus non-trust, and it's a very digital way of approaching things. I believe it has a usefulness, but I don't believe the future is where we try to block and silo everything from each other. I believe the future is the opposite, where our currency is actually almost authentically who we are on the inside. Like who we are is not replaceable by code, by calculations, by algorithms, by a digital double. We will not be replaced by that. And I think there's a sense in the world of technology that we could be replaced by machines and robots.
Yeah, and just really quickly too on blockchain with Web3, when you hear about Web3, it's essentially the transparency and portability. Those are the two main things I see. So for instance, we'll talk a little bit about the Metrieverse, which is our vision for connecting to nature and harmonizing technology with humans. We're creating a co-opetition where architects, designers, sustainability experts can team together to create these tree houses. Those tree houses can actually be what's called minted as an NFT, which means that essentially you can pick up that tree house out of the Metrieverse, and then you can take it to a different metaverse. So there are other worlds like CryptoVoxels, Decentraland, Sandbox. Those are some of the kind of leading emerging virtual worlds right now. So with when they're Web3 and they're moving on the blockchain, you can actually take that digital 3D design image and then move it from world to world. So that's one of the use cases of how blockchain fits in. Also funding a lot of these projects through different blockchain enabled technologies such as NFTs or tokens or other ways.
Yeah. It's all these new words and the new lingo, the jargon of the digital world. I have to personally say, I don't remember or know much about it. Like, even if I'm working in technology and creating all this, I'm trying to do this in a way so we're free from technology, so that we use it and it bounces us back into real life, and that it doesn't exclude people. I believe it's a, like, everything we have in a way is a common heritage, but there's a part of our logic centers that won't accept that, because we didn't build everything that's here today. It's a rally of human beings before us. So there's always a disconnect there that I believe this new immersion of technology can finally connect the dots for us, where our inner worlds, our spiritual realms that know so much, can be safeguarded in a way where we can connect with other people and still keep our privacy, still keep our individuality, and still keep our uniqueness, while knowing we are all one. That requires a certain amount of space and guidance, ancient guidance, actually. Instead of artificial intelligence, we need almost ancient intuition.
You're speaking our language. Let's look at your slides and get to know you, and then get back to this mission. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was born in Sri Lanka in 1981, and I lived there for about a year, and then I moved to Nigeria, to Calabar, and I grew up in Nigeria for about 5 years, and then jumped again from Calabar to Montreal, Canada. And I grew up in Montreal, so I did all my education there. I studied in French, and I did 3 years in pure and applied sciences, and then I moved on to building engineering. And I did that because I want to be an architect, and I want to be an architect because I want to draw, not work.
Or build.
Yeah. But there was something childish about it as well too, and young, is that I was like, if we have all this work around us and calculators are there and computers are there, what are we going to need engineers for? We're just going to build until we build over the entire planet. Like, there was something that didn't make sense to me. And while I was in school, in university, I'll share this story because it gives context.
Sure.
When I was 21, one night I'm going to a club with friends, and I did not like going to clubs and partying at that time. I was very straight edge. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I was usually the designated driver. And I'm going with my friends, and I'm actually not driving that night. I'm super tired. I don't want to be there. And while we're driving over the highway in Montreal, I fall asleep for about 10 minutes. And when I woke back up, nothing around me made sense. Like, the visuals of what I was seeing did not make any sense. Cars looked like machine beetles that were eating people, just transporting them. Buildings looked like the opposite of trees, like these mechanical structures, and they were holding life inside of them, like antennas that weren't connected. Highways looked like mechanical tree branches. I just couldn't make sense of anything. And for about 10 minutes, I'm looking around going, no one knows what we're doing. We're just...
A spiritual awakening.
Just, yeah. And then within 10 minutes, that whole thing started to come back into my psyche. And we went to this club, which was on the 30th floor. And I go up, and I didn't dance or anything. I just go to the patio, and I was just staring at the city, Montreal, all this stuff built. And I'm like, where are we going? It looked like a motherboard to me. And it was like, does anyone have a plan? Can we even see this? Like, it just baffled me. And since that time, in my 20s, I think I became progressively angry. I think I just became progressively annoyed with the world, angry with the amount of arguments. And every time I would hear an argument online, on TV, in my family, between my friends, I saw it as like, these are misunderstandings. We are all the same puzzle pieces that are moving our mouths, doing these gestures. Sounds are hitting each other and we're not making any sense and we're arguing about it. So I kept on going through this path and I started doing a lot of personal development. And so I
Your
started
dark
working.
night of the soul. Yeah, it does that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I got into Tony Robbins and I also left engineering. I did a bunch of personal like tests, career aptitude tests. And they were all saying, you know, leave engineering, go into art. You love film, you love movies. And I was told you can't make money, you'd become a poor artist. So I had a girlfriend at the time that introduced me to Lord of the Rings, and we watched the behind the scenes making of Lord of the Rings in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I don't know if either of you have seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was just so impressed that people were out there creating art and sculptures and telling stories and making a living out of it.
And worlds that made sense.
And worlds that made sense, about stories that were meaningful, about people coming to get, like, I was like, wow, you can do this. I literally spent 2 weeks learning how to draw. I switched out of film animation and I applied to, I switched into film animation, applied into the program. I was one out of the, you know, there's like 400, I think 20 people got accepted and I got in. And as soon as I got into film school, I had that moment where I looked around me. I was like, I'm in the right place. I'm not just studying to calculate. I'm studying to create. And I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to create, but there were stories in me that wanted to come out. So I just started 3 years in film school. I had an incredible time. I produced 3 films and I learned everything there was to know about film and like storyboards, concept art. And there was a new emerging field, which was digital matte painting, which no one knew about. And this was the art of taking an environment and trying to paint it as real as possible. And
can we see some of this?
Yes, I was just gonna. So this is some of my older work, and it's a little dark. So I'll give you context to why it's dark, but these are digital environments of Mars that a film studio would hire me, and they would put me in a team, and they would say, we have a movie about Mars. Can you draw sketches of what it would look like? Can you build it in 3D? And can you paint and mix together pictures so we can make a real environment?
I'm glad the geodesic dome made it and other domes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking a lot at Buckminster Fuller for this because I was a fan of his work as well. And so they would film, for example, just the main character, and then everything in the background I would create using images. I would cut together a sky, I would color correct it, cut out mountains, paste them all together, mix the lighting. So I really spent a lot of time learning about lighting and rendering and integrating so that it's invisible. So nobody knows that it's a painting. And I'll quickly jump. This is kind of gruesome, but this is from the film Logan. And they needed me to do like the spike of blood.
Yeah.
So they film it with they just put a metal rod and they send it to artists to say, can you paint in a piece of wood and add more blood on him, add more texture and make it look real. So all of Hugh Jackman is wearing a white t-shirt and I'm adding the blood on top of it, which is a gruesome thing to do, but this is what they do in film.
It's what you're hired to do.
It's what you're hired to do. I started getting disturbed by it by the end of it and I left the industry. But I had a lot of movies that would come my way that were chosen for me, like 9/11, a lot of movies about the Twin Towers showed up. A lot of movies about magic and having a different face. Digital avatars and having masks on. This was for a movie where this woman is wearing a mask and a magic spell removes the mask and she takes it off like an eggshell and it cracks in her hands. And she's actually an old person pretending to be a young person, which is happening now with our digital screens. People are, with filters and everything.
Yeah, create the avatar you want to
Yeah.
project. Yeah.
This was the tree of life and the tree of death. There were many of these themes, and Christa's working with trees. I didn't realize this, but I was being called into the industry almost like to learn about these themes that kept showing up. Mm-hmm. And I'm just unconsciously painting mountains and environments. And so these are more of these far away establishing shots. Mm-hmm. So it's very much about learning how environments work and how people move through environments.
Yeah.
Good prep for what you're going to do now.
Exactly. And then the next thing that I did a lot of was on my spare time is I did a lot of sketching of people. I did a lot of concept art and a lot of like drawing of my friends. I moved from traditional art to digital art. So when I started with traditional art, I'll scroll down quickly to show some of my traditional work. They're not in order, apologize, but here. So this is a lot of life drawing, a lot of sketching from TV. This is from the TV series Lost.
Oh, yeah.
So the themes in my life were always the same, about being lost, getting found, reflections, Mars, Twin Towers, twinning, all those doubling. That was always like capturing the essence of something, of a human being. Those were really the themes of my life. And so movie making was learning how to draw from within my head, mm-hmm. and also drawing like a photocopying machine. Right side and left side of brain, being able to look at something and reproduce it as exactly as I could, as well as closing my eyes and imagining that thing and then recreating it as clearly as I could. So understanding how light bounces, shadow, perspective. So it's like really blending those two worlds together was mostly my
what makes the scene look real, feel
real. Mm-hmm. And also what lets me do the work I'm doing today. That's why I see everything as triangles, shape, and value. I just see faces moving. So I think a lot the way artificial intelligence does when it's scanning us, and all this bias that's coming out. Like I see why it's seeing that.
Interesting.
And when I see it, I'm like, they can't get rid of it by coding out bias. It's ironically going to create more bias. It's paradoxical. So yeah, this is some of my older artwork, which is very dark. And all my friends were like, why is your art so dark? And I was like, I don't know. I don't see this. It's just
working something out here.
I'm working something out here. I'm like, I didn't know why, but I spent so long with a blank page, white, and being scared of it, that when I went into the digital world, I started with dark. I started with gray. And then I built light into it. Well, so I went the reverse.
Imagery, iconography, symbols, certainly exactly. A language, and a universal language.
Exactly, yeah. Universal language. And that's really over my time doing all these paintings was, we are missing a universal language. We are missing something that connects us beyond our nationality, our heritage, our roles, our careers, our jobs, our titles, even our gender. There's something beyond us that connects us all. That's way, way deeper, that I don't believe can be measured or should be attempted to measure, because that's the mystery of every human being. You discover them as you spend time with them. If you know everything about them, it's like playing a video game where you know you're going to win all the time. It'll get very boring. And we're seeing that now with life. Yeah, we're seeing that with teenagers having 300 relationships by the time they're 16, and they've diluted their cup of the depth. At least they think so at that age. So there's all these new problems that show up with technology as well that
I see us as explorers. We've colonized the world and we need new frontiers to now go colonize.
Exactly.
And this is a created frontier
exactly.
to create and colonize.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wow, what a career. How many movies? I mean, you have quite the listing on the International Movie Database. Worked on a lot of films.
15 years in the film industry, in the official film industry. And I also did a lot of storyboards on the side. So I started freelancing where I'll get back to the pitch deck, where an advertising studio would call me at the last minute and they need to flesh out an idea. So I'd go meet with them and they need 12 storyboards, quick little sketches of what happens so they can show the people that they're paying, this is how many cameras we need, this is the environment, like everything's organized.
Right.
But that's where I saw everything started with a sketch. Other people needed to see another person's vision before they committed to it.
And this is what the metaverse can also do for us.
This is what the metaverse can do for us.
Share visions.
Share a vision where we can see how we are all undeniably connected.
Yep.
And we could do that with, multiple visions, but we can also do that by looking forcefully, like consciously looking for what bonds us all. What are when two people say we're so opposite, now we can actually look and go, well, if you're human, you're human. Here's what connects you, and here's where you can get along, or here's where you can thrive or play together.
Yeah. I see one's life journey also as what we need to balance, what we need to find balance, what we didn't get, we want to seek to fulfill that. And Christa, even your childhood, when you describe, do you want to describe that and how you went into high tech and business? Because you got pretty much the opposite in your childhood, a very adventuresome and conventional childhood. But do you want to speak to that point for just a moment?
Yeah. Sure. Yes. So thank you. And I remember being enthralled by technology. As soon as I learned about computers, I begged my mom to get one, and I would go through like the magazines and find like Cheerios.com and be like, Mom, I got to go learn more about Cheerios. So we need the internet. So as soon as I learned about technology and video games, I was always excited. I think primarily because when I was a kid, I was raised by hippies. I was born on a bus that my parents lived on at the time. My dad had 40 acres and grew flowers and was a alternate entrepreneur, I will call him. So we actually weren't allowed to go inside during the day. That was one of the rules. We only had 3 television stations that we could only watch at night. But we did watch movies together, and I loved movies. I loved, the being able to go beyond what you can see in this physical world. And I also loved rainbows. You can see in G's slide, that was a picture of him in Calabar,
Nigeria.
Nigeria. This is actually a picture of my sister and some friends of ours, and we were actually like chasing this rainbow, and we used to go to rainbow gatherings. And I'm like a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz, because that was it was the first color movie. It has so many of the themes of just life, and yeah, it's really also, convinced me that all of the movies, especially Disney movies, are kind of the universe speaking to us and telling us these stories of these parables and these archetypes, and giving us the guidance and direction through, humanity creating these things. So I did have this reoccurring nightmare when I was a kid of the Wizard of Oz and the Wicked Witch and this like cyclone and flying around my house, and I couldn't scream. I had no voice. And I think that's one of the key memories that also is part of innately who I am. It's part of my purpose in sharing my voice and connecting people so that they can share their voices. And really, I think our whole purpose for being as human beings is to evolve this human technology. We're all innovators. We're all pioneers. Like you said, Laura, And we're right now pioneering this virtual frontier as well as the age of abundance. And when we have abundance, we have to know how to handle it. My dad always said, there was a couple of sayings growing up that we had. One was believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. And the other one was too much of anything can kill you. So this is true. I believe, too much water can drown you, fire can burn you, any of these things that are life-giving and affirmative, too much food can kill you, yada, yada, yada. So that's also something that I bring in as I work with technology and think about how do we leverage these tools to create this persistent visual fourth dimension that we can all explore together and share together. And hopefully one day create a dream machine too, because I have really vivid dreams and I just want to be able to like show people like, this is what happened in my dreams. So that's also one of my life goals. But yeah,
during our sessions. Yeah. So, interesting. Go ahead, Paul.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so yeah, I can see why you would go into tech growing up with hippie parents and having an adventuresome life, that balance that we seek to. Are we going to get a tour of the metaverse?
Yeah, let's do that.
And what you've been creating as you tell us what it is and why and the purpose of it. I think that would be very, yeah, here it is. Metrieverse.
Yeah, so we'll jump into that just to really quickly to round out my story. My house burnt down when I was 6, and that kind of catapulted us on this nomadic journey. And I think a lot of people rebel against their parents. I rebelled against my parents in this kind of hippie nomadic lifestyle and joined the corporate world. I started my first company when I was 20, started teaching college business communications when I was 21, and then had my career with Gartner and other startups in the research and advisory field. But what I also found, I had my own kind of spiritual awakening. I was fired from Gartner because I was at this place of burnout and I drank too much in front of my team. I made a fool out of myself. I had my own kind of come to Jesus and dark night of the soul, and then began to really appreciate nature and my upbringing and the ability to connect to anyone, anywhere. Just like trees, we all have roots that can connect invisibly. And this Metrieverse, I don't know if anyone here has been into the metaverse, into the big ones are like Decentraland, Crypto Voxels, Sandbox, Second Life. The thing that in the current state is when you jump into these worlds, you're like spawned in. It's not necessarily always the most pleasant experience. You can get dropped into a place. It's very kind of disorienting, sometimes confusing. You could have other people land on top of you, inside you. They're like talking to you. You have spatial voice. So you could literally land inside another person and they could talk to you and be like, hey, what are you doing on me or in me, you know? So our vision for the Metrieverse is to create a really safe shared space that is a hub and connecting ground for conscious leaders, creators, connectors, human beings who really want to make more out of their life than what just meets the surface. So G actually created this rendering for me. I've had this vision for many years to create these actual retreat spaces like the Ewok villages, but really infusing more high tech into the landscape, but also building sustainably with regenerative materials. And all of these technologies are converging now to where we can actually do these things in harmony with nature. They're coming along. So that's really where we see it going. But that's more of the external environment. What G's been working on before we get to building out the Metrieverse. We're in works of that now, and we're about to go on a funding journey. So this is getting really exciting. But first, we need to tune our inner technology and find harmony within. So that's the work that G's been doing, and that's what we'll jump into showing you today.
You know, you mentioned trees in your Treeverse, and it's I can't help but contemplate how the tree of life is such an eternal and universal symbol. The roots going down into the earth, the branches up into the heavens, the trunk is our middle earth, and how that is connecting the cosmos to the earth, and a stand-in for our spine, and all of that. And then you have in the movie Avatar, James Cameron chose a treehouse, a giant treehouse for this other, this race, this alien race. And then the actual experience of taking the soul and putting the spirit into it, or having, I mean, that was very metaversy. Avatar in its layout, was it not? And then you mentioned the Ewok village and the living amongst the trees. It's so, trees are so beautiful. Trees are so much a part of our psyche. I just want to comment on that. That I've no wonder that you chose a Treeverse. So much a part of us, and symbolically through the ages.
I want to say that too. One of the things that attracted me to Treedem, Christa's vision, was my own like nonstop staring at trees, like their function. Like a lot of enlightenment happens because people meditated under trees, under shade. And in different countries, like shade was survival. Like that's where a lot of consciousness was created. And the tree, the beauty of it, that we don't see its roots, how deeply it goes, that the roots are invisible to us, but the leaves are not. That's very much like how we are. Like we don't know all of the roots that are connected to us. All of our ancestry were cut off from it. So all of those things are now showing up in technology, in the way people on different timelines are forgetting, one, we're all in the same timeline. Like if you lined every human being on planet Earth, we're exactly at the same time. And we're not all the same age. Like, and it's something that's forgotten nowadays in society, when we have much younger people shaming, shouting, and taking down the elders that have built most of the stuff that we have here. And so it's not perfect, but it's like they built it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but our founding fathers and Abraham Lincoln did us some huge favors in their context, in their era. They were innovators. They were also, I have to say that now we're finding that trees communicate with one another. They release pheromones. They can change the chemistry of their leaves to discourage animals eating their leaves. They connect through their roots and the rhizomes. They share resources, tree to tree. And what are we but advanced apes? And mammals took to the trees to escape the dinosaurs. When mammals and dinosaurs coexisted, the trees were a safe place for mammals, little mammals, to run around and exist. But trees were so much a part of our whole ancestry. You talk about ancestries, trees were right there as part of it.
Exactly. Go ahead, Paul.
No, in the interest of time, let's go to the next aspect of it, because this is fascinating, and I've had a preview. I just want to give trees their honor and their due. Absolutely, and I've had a preview of where we're going, so I'm excited for everyone to see it.
Oh, right. Yeah. So to set it up, so I'd like to take everyone through Human 101, which is a VR meta map of the human being. So it's almost like it's a space where all it is a design that links everything together. So it's almost like taking the center point, your non-local mind, and bringing it inside the Metrieverse. So it's like you're traveling into a version of humanity, and then we can go and see the different parts of the mind, the heart center, body center. And so I'll load it up, and Christa, I'll let you guide me through the entrance, and please bear with me. It's a little bit shaky. I'll do my best to go smoothly and to stop at every intersection, but just look away because it's still on my head, and as I speak there's a little bit of movement with it.
And what are you putting on your head? You have to describe what this is.
So this is a VR headset,
Oculus Quest 2.
I have been building these maps.
Space helmet, yeah.
It's like a space helmet, also like a diaper on my head. But that's what technology has done now. And I've been building it in 3D all these years, but it's just recently in the last 6 months, an architect from Toronto sent me this. And he said, oh, you got to try VR. And I went in here and I built the whole thing. And it's a different experience to have it on. I'm just going to put on the toque as well.
See, that architecture and engineering came in good stead. That was a piece of your journey.
Yes, it was. Like finally all the architects came around me, which is great.
It was very synchronistic as well, as that's who introduced G and I. And it's part of our book club. I will also say about the Quest 2. So these devices you can order on Oculus for $300 to $400. So they're relatively affordable. The one that G uses has a cable that connects to his computer. So it is, your computer may need higher graphics to connect the cable to access some of the metaverse. But as technology evolves, then those requirements, I think, will be more easily accessible as well. So
that's why Apple's pitching its M chip and
everybody's constantly
everyone is constantly, like, they're all going for it. They all see what's possible with it, but I still think there's something really missing. So this map here shows Earth right in the center, Venus here and Mars here, and I'm trying to show that we connect the wisdom of these 3 planets and we can unlock financial freedom for everyone. We can work with a lot of the paradoxes that happen in the world. And so this is a map called Human 101, and it's about the basics of human beings. And it's essentially acknowledging that technology came through us. And it's a place where you can look at life and share your story in multiple dimensions of life, where you can connect dots. And it's like a giant puzzle that we could all put together using our phones. So, and it's also to deal with the problems in the world. And I see it as like 4 big meta problems, which is that we have no unified mission. We have no unified purpose. We have no unified dream and no unified vision. And it seems like an impossibility, but starting with knowing what our vision is, our mission, our purpose, and our dream is what this map is for. So people can go in and explore, figure those things out for themselves, and share it with the world in a way where it is integrated with everything that's already created.
Yeah, the other beauty of this is really diving into the big picture of spiritual personal evolution. And that was one of the things when G and I met, I had been working on developing an overall kind of guiding framework that connected a lot of the personal development work that I did on finding my purpose, discovering my true identity, defining my purpose, doing what I love, and developing along the way. So when he showed me the work he was working on, it took it to a whole nother level beyond what I had done. And it also gave a space that I could put my framework in here. And anyone who is leading, teaching, coaching could also create, their space. You have this kind of 4-dimensional blank canvas that you can use to create as much depth as you want without the limits of, the previous kind of 2D websites, or having to make everything in videos and having a full production team. This is one person creating this, which is just one tiny example of what's possible within building in your own worlds.
Well said, Christa. Yeah, this is really, like, I was seeing it as all the problems in the world we're facing, we were dealing with it with duality. We were dealing with it with, like, in 2D, writing books, giving experiences that we're trying to share through books, but it's only through experiential wisdom that people actually have breakthroughs, like through the work that you do, that you both do, that, and the Institute. Those are the experiences that change our lives. And when I was 31, I first did ayahuasca. And when I had my first experience, saw that we were trying to deal with multidimensional problems in 2D and with language. And I was like, this is not going to work. The only thing that works is sound and art, the things that connect to us in between language, like the moments in between of silence, were what really fascinated us. And so this timeline shows on the z-axis. I'm going to turn off this quick, sorry. Is a timeline of the past, the present, and the future, with a model of humanity just sitting on top of it. And if we look at a timeline, usually, I'm just going to turn the lights off so this is clear. During our lifetime, something will happen. And that something, if it's pleasant to us, it can become a gift. And if it's unpleasant, it can become a trauma. And in this map, I'm considering anything 0 as a trauma and anything 1 and conscious as a gift. And when we don't integrate our trauma, it usually pulls our energy down towards our fate. And if we integrate our gifts, it usually pulls us up towards our destiny and allows us some freedom in who we say we are or want to be in our lives. Normally, this is a duality. This is gift versus trauma. And what I notice is that this axis can spin. A gift can turn into a trauma, and a trauma can turn into a gift. And very often it's random for us. So this map allows us to actually pause and look in between and look and see that number 1, usually the trauma happens, and then afterwards only the gift happens.
Or how do we transmute the trauma into a gift?
Exactly. So how do we transmute the trauma into the gift? And that is where this map comes in.
Oh, I see. Yes.
It's normally always pros versus cons. It's a duality decision-making that we do. We vote someone in, we choose a job, and we have a boss. And then it's always this one versus the other thing that happens. And throughout time, it's unsustainable. Our pros turn into cons, our cons turn into pros, and it leaves us with a lot of uncertainty, confusion, regret. And time just keeps on moving, so we don't always have time to process. This map allows us to pause, to zoom in, and to look at the multiple dimensions in color spectrum of what we're dealing with. That means looking at it not just as X versus Y or 1 versus 0, but really looking at the spectrum in between 0 and 1, like the full range and color that's there. And so for that, this map, and please stop me if I'm going too quickly.
You're fine, doing good.
Great, thank you. This map allows us to go into the different centers of the human being. I'll open up titles here really quickly. I have a menu on the side, by the way, which is probably what is, when I'm looking away, what that looks like. So the mind center, the heart center, and the matter center of humanity, I don't feel is connected. Clearly, we're being attacked by airborne viruses and all that. So the heart center is definitely being attacked right now. And in this map, we're doing game shows and events inside, for example, the heart center, where we can look at how our inner child is doing and whether we're connected to our higher self or not. And this is done by taking a snapshot inside of here with these beings that we can place and pose. So this is where the work that you do is so incredible, because our postures create our antennas that reveal our frequencies to us. Mm-hmm. And so understanding how our antennas actually work in our body positioning is incredibly important for the future. We can't just power pose if we're hurting on the inside. Mm-hmm. We have to have an integrated view of all of these 3 centers. And the biggest division right now is really in our mind center. We're taking in so much information nowadays. And that leaves us with problems between our sides of order and our sides of chaos. That's here on the x-axis. It also affects the z-axis, our pull to stay on Earth versus this new pull to fly to space or to exit the planet. There are people doing it together, like consciously, and there are people doing it unconsciously to escape the planet. All of that's going on at the same time. That's multiplied through time, past, present, and future. And then there's the hidden dimension, the fourth dimension, which is all of the input we're taking versus our output. And since we've been schooled and educated, this layer, this invisible, because all of our input is within us, we can't see it. And so there are people walking around with tremendous banks of knowledge and wisdom that don't know what to do with it. And then there's people on the planet that have tremendous amounts of power without any wisdom that are causing destruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
These dualities is not even because those people are bad. It's because they can't see their insides. They don't know what's going inside their mind. And so we haven't been able to do this until we've had experiences that we can go into our mind center. So I'm going to go into the mind center just now. I'm going to take off the titles.
The imbalance that you've referred to with the mind center, that there's so much information coming to us, there's so much happening around ourselves that creates this imbalance. It's kind of a catch-22, really, when you think about the fact that we're, even in this discussion, we're using the technology which is using so much of our mind centers to try to understand and hopefully
Our mind center.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's like it's a catch-22.
It's a catch-22, and that's the thing, is that we're living in a paradox sphere. Like, all of these are paradoxes. So when we walk in here, there's like, I'm just going to pull into the mind center really quickly. It looks a little messy, but in here, I've got all the different channels that are going into us as we think. If we had a little person sitting inside our brain, we have all this data coming from our ears, coming in from our eyes, our nostrils, and our senses: light, sound, and smell. And then our reptilian brain has to deal with this very quickly, which leaves us with a lot of confusion and leaves us in a realm, again, of duality, which is often our pros in our minds versus our cons. And as I was showing earlier, if we look at it within the mind center, there's many sides to us, and those are always fighting. There's like a confusion that happens. And so in the way I've mapped it, we have a quadrant in our mind that's always looking for our purpose, what we're here to do on the planet, what we're here to do as human beings. We have our missions, which are often like our to-dos, our responsibilities, our, just what we have to do to survive. And on the other side, within us, we have an internal vision, someplace we want to go, and that changes all the time, depending on what we're dealing with. And then we have our eternal dream, our vision of what life could be like in our mind's eye. We each have our own almost soap opera in our heads of what life could be like. And these are just arguing inside our heads usually. And we fight, we talk with other people, we do whatever we need to. And at some point, movement will happen.
Yeah.
There will be a rise in awareness, and we'll go from 2 dots to 3, and then we'll start forming a circle. And that often happens by us just settling, picking one side over the other, making one big decision and saying, well, the other one doesn't have enough pros for me. So we'll have 3 sides of us that agree. I just gave an example here of the dream being left out, but it could be our vision being left out. But usually one side gets left out, is my point with this little map. How's everyone doing with the pace of?
Well, it's interesting to see this illustrated in this way.
Yeah, and you're doing
It's
a great
interesting
job of
to-
pacing it.
yeah.
Great, thank you. So yeah, there's movement, there's duality, number 2. There's movement, number 3, and then finally, the beauty of having a community or a space where we can stand still and have some stability to actually have a foundation to move from. And that's the number 4. And I have this as an example here as a 4-legged table being more stable than the 3-legged table. Right now, we have governments and systems that are supposed to be our stability, but they're all 3-branched systems, which are created for movement. And so we have this nonstop movement, but we don't know where we're going. So it creates a lot of problems in the world. And we've just classified by country and by region, but it's still a problem, and there's still everything happening as you know in the world. So this tool, this company, this whole project is really about pausing. It's about, what if we paused innovation? What if we looked within before we went to create on the outside?
Mm-hmm.
What if we checked in what every person needed on the inside before we just went chasing to create it on the outside?
Could you make a gamify this so that people could learn life skills, or learn about their own journey, or learn about their family history, or do like a Sim City for development of their psyche, to weigh in checks and balances? I mean, could there be a way to make this engaging and entertaining, but actually learn something besides how to blow stuff up? Right?
Exactly. Laura, this is what it's all, for me, this is what it's all about. Every single thing you talked about, I want to create a place mainly for integration and art that has meaning and legacy, art that matters.
Art that helps us grow.
Art that helps us
in
grow.
Useful ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to, one of the aha moments for me is, if you look at, you look at history and you think about us as eternal beings. And in my view of the world, this world was created as a game. It's a simulation.
Yeah.
And early in life, there was a lot of war, a lot of brutality, a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict, a lot of my God is better than your God. To me, it was kind of set up as an arena, and we, as spiritual beings, embodied these bodies to come down and kind of, test out our theories on how things should work and how we should play this game. And that's where, as you see the metaverse coming up, you look at the games, most of the games starting out are fighting games. They're war games. They're, getting that shadow, that brutality, that energy that humans innately possess, and giving a, quote unquote safe space for people to be able to do that. And that's how I've kind of started to understand it. But what we need to do, in my view, to move forward and to evolve beyond that, is to create spaces and games like this that we can use to have fun. We can create our digital twins and avatars and put them through simulations and be in our own heroes' journeys in a way that we can also be creating at the same time.
Yeah, leave the reptilian brain. It's had its exercise all these decades and millennia. And how about activating some of the other centers of our brain?
I love that you brought up the reptilian brain, Laura. I have a little map of it, so I'm going to definitely turn it on right now.
Okay. Yeah.
I have the reptilian brain here. And to me, the brain has always looked like a person bent over, looking at their own navel.
In the fetal position, going, exactly. enough.
Yeah.
Or I'm about to be eaten by the dinosaurs. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like looking at our own navel, which is the ultimate navel gazing.
Okay.
Which is sitting on top of our heads, which is us looking inwards.
Yeah.
And so, this whole idea that our navel, where our life, our umbilical cord is actually attached, in our mind center, is within us. it's actually pulling us to really look at who we are. And then we're gathering all this information outside, but we're looking at other people to know that we are a part of them. They are a part of us. But we've kept on dividing until we got back to these magic mirrors that show us back again, hey, we're all together and we're all one.
I don't want to put warriorship down, because I think that was such a necessary part in the male contribution. But really, where is the women's wisdom in our society? Where's the women's wisdom in our world or these games, so that we can look and start to flourish with some of these other attributes? I always say, guys, you've held the stage long enough. Let the women take their rightful place, and then stop running amok with all this testosterone and start to use some of these other attributes and find balance, right? So we're going to have to find a way for women's contributions and wisdom and gifts to find a place and equally on the stage to activate this. And when you look at the computer simulations of what, when you get a like on Facebook or something, it's supposed to create a ping in the brain that's enjoyable, right? A confirmation, a pat on the back. So what about some of these other attributes? What are these other pings that need to happen in our brain to grow these other muscles? Can we set up simulations where we want to actually come forward with other strengths and other gifts and other skills that are rewarded in these games? I mean, we could really harness this to grow where we need to grow as a society. I should think this would be a way to do that, would it not?
It is. To me, it's like Christa was saying, all these, at first it was all about these fantasies that people had about destruction. It was all violent video games. The first game that I played was Wolfenstein 3D. And I was fascinated that even in comic books and even video games, the first thing people did was create a place where you could go and punch Hitler in the face. It was all about.
All right, he deserved it.
but that's the thing, that he was also he catalyzed all of this imagination. Like, people put a lot of work just to punch him in the face again. We created a lot of tech for that. And I was like, if all this is being created for destruction and the cutting, what if we created something for harmony? Could we set up a space where the human ego is almost bounced on itself, mirrored back until it's reflected within our own being? And that's kind of where this stability started for this whole idea of, if we can see in 360 degrees inside our minds, we would know that when we are arguing with other people and we are in conflict, 99% of the time, it's something we could have checked out within ourselves and avoided the conflict or transmuted the conflict.
I also see that lectures of the future will be using this kind of, and we always see it in movies, right? The Iron Man movies, they're sitting in front of not even a screen, but they get to move things around, screens blow stuff up, close screens go around like this. So we're already imagining all of this. There's a Bruce Willis movie that I watched where everybody's got their avatars and their avatars are interacting. And of course, they look like models, right? All and airbrushed hair and skin and all this. And then he blows the whole thing up because he thought, hey, what we're really doing is sitting on the couch being ill and living through these imaginary beings, not even ourselves. Get off the couch, go out and live your life. So it's interesting how we're imagining the use of this, how it's been precursored, but so many advantages to really get inside. You can just see house sales, right? Let me tour the house before. I don't even have to go there. I'll know what it looks like. Exactly. Let me look inside an atom and talk to about theoretical physics about this and lay out superstring theory and lay out this. Let me medicine, let the doc go in and show you exactly what's happening. So many wonderful uses for this. So this has been a wonderfully illustrated. You could have said the words, but seeing your images and navigating around and putting the colors and the symbols to it just added so much.
And also just quickly, before we go in, G's going to show you the arena that kind of illustrates more of those core archetypes and the way to orient yourself internally. But I did want to address your question about the voice of the women as well. And
yes, speak up.
Women, as we go into the archetypes, he can show you, we've done a mapping of the feminine archetypes, the core feminine archetypes, as well as the core masculine archetypes. And we're really trying to bring more visibility and awareness to the fact that we all have both feminine and masculine. And women stereotypically do a really nice job in storytelling. My daughter, actually, she's now 14, but when she was 12, she wrote a story called Isabella Creation. And it's about the daughter of Mother Time and Mother Earth and Father Time. And it kind of gives a lot of the illustration of kind of visiting heaven and this Isabella coming down to teach kids creativity and emotional intelligence and spiritual law, and then sets the stage for an education simulation game. So you can create your own avatar. You can do the personality tests to create, yourself as your digital twin. But the nice thing with the metaverse is, like, you can look however you want to look. You can show up in this space as who you see yourself internally and not what you were necessarily birthed with, which can give so many people with disabilities, deformities, social challenges, a whole new opportunity at life.
Oh, and think about the masks that we've always worn through indigenous cultures and how you can step into another persona. Look at the theater and how we get to step and expand and dissolve boundaries and become other beings for a spell. It's a beautiful endeavor indeed. And yeah.
Yeah, really well said, Christa. Like the emergence of feminine technology is like, it's happening now. It needed to happen after 2020. And that's because for me, that was the year of the double, where we started doubling ourselves. And the workforce actually became more equalized as women started going into the digital world, because their skill level now is needed for this remote viewing life that we're in now, where we're all in front of screens. By the way, my Oculus stopped tracking, so that might be, unfortunately, the end of the tour. I'm not able to go into the arena.
Well, we've got lots of questions and comments for you.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. And that was a lovely tour. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to take the headset off and put the camera back on.
Okay.
Really quickly.
Thank you. We've all dipped our toe now into the metaverse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been lots of questions and discussions in the chat room throughout the presentation. I think the main thing, those of a certain generation, those of us of a certain generation, are saying, how much do we need where we can still just have a peaceful life? I mean, the extent of technology and the way that it's developing, it's. We don't want to lose that natural human experience, going back to Christa's experience of just living on the land and being surrounded by the trees and having very limited television and external things and not being even allowed to be indoors in the daytime. I mean, going back to that natural experience of being human. And how do we integrate? And like I said in the very beginning, this isn't going to stop. It's not like we're voting on whether or not we should do this. This is done.
We don't want to be Luddites, but we want to go intelligently into the future that can feel like a runaway train.
And even in the position of Laura and I directors of this institute, we say, okay, we have to stay pace with technology because that's where education is going. That's where knowledge is going to be distributed.
Don't want to be left behind.
So you can't. So by the time you get your book written, it's like, oh, we're not reading books anymore. We're going to be doing this. Okay, well, I'm doing YouTube. That's the thing of the past. You're doing Facebook. That was 5 years ago. You're way out of. You're not staying pace with what's happening in terms of how the world is changing. But we know that the world of education, of learning, and like your goal, your inspiration here, and I think it's really important that we really emphasize what you're seeing here, G, what you've brought forward, and that is that
G and Christa,
both of you, being able to encapsulate this technology and use it to reflect back onto ourselves, to go back and
to grow spiritually.
That growth can happen, and that we can use the technology in a beneficial way, not being led by the technology, but we're using the technology to lead us back to ourselves.
I'm extreme enough to say it's the point of technology. It came through us for a reason. We have everyone has screens around them now, and little pieces, like these are parts that came through by people studying numbers, symbolism, writing on paper, gathering, building material, creating this foundation. There's a long pool. And then out of that, it's like the yin-yang symbol to me. It's the yin materialized yin energy, and it has that little white dot of everything inside of it. It shows us the collective unconscious, parts of the collective unconscious everywhere. And there's a reason for that. It's trying to show us that we're all one, and we need a better system than the one that we're using right now. It's not that it's a bad system. It's just, it's working at 50% capacity. Like money is a paradox. Everyone knows money makes the world go around, but most of us are like, well, money is the search for money is the root of all evil. There are these paradoxes running within us. Like, can we trust governments? We shouldn't. There are all these paradoxes running within our mind, and then they're being manifested in society. So what technology is here for is to actually show us a mirror of ourselves so we can resolve our own paradoxes, which means our centers, our mind, our heart, and our bodies are all lit up. They're all connected. And then those lit up parts are then projected outwards into our field of view. Right now, they're not on or off. And because they're not on or off, these colors are looking for their complementary colors. We're just searching for the colors we don't have within us.
To complete ourselves.
To
be whole beings.
But we're doing it like without like trusting that we're all one. So it's like we're not all playing the same video game, and we could be. That's what I love about Christa's idea about Isabella Creation, is that it teaches people to go through with these big meta principles about life, but makes you more joyful in playing the game of life. You just need, like, in a way, a GPS system. And if we're not lucky enough to have the communities around us to show us how we can use our super bionic computer that has water in it, that's the only difference between us and computers now. We carry water and eternal cosmic consciousness in the water molecules. Computers don't have that. And computers are cut and dry. So the only thing about cut and dry computers is you can go within your own mind and you can see the 360. What are the archetypes influencing you? What are your wants and needs that are pushing you forward that you can't see? And if you have that, you can actually make movements towards wholeness by curing yourself first, your friends, your community, your family, then your country, and then move forward. You can do it from a more organized, natural pacing, instead of just being angry at the world and trying to fix Colombia when you live in, live somewhere else. It's like,
maybe we'll realize this is the Matrix. We're all living in the Matrix, and the Matrix was just a nice intro to the metaverse as well, wasn't it? But
the way I
see
it
within it. Yeah.
Sorry, Laura. No, I was just going to add, we think about just the magic of us having this conversation and the richness of seeing each other's images and hearing each other's voices in real time. All of this is happening with ones and zeros. It's all being broken down and translated from 1 and a 0. And now we're going into the world of quantum, which is 1 and 0. So we're going from this world of duality that we've created as a way to show us who we are, as we're all mirror reflections of each other walking around. Our technology is a mirror reflection of who we are at the grandest level. And now it's a yes and. It's going from duality to it's a either or,
all of the above,
going to a yes and as we move into quantum.
1 or 0 to 1 and 0. I would say also we're going from inner technology to outer technology. Marry those.
Marry those.
Build
We're
the
marrying
bridges.
that.
Interdimensional.
Bridges.
And I mean, for us, that's the whole idea of holding up the mirror so that we go back to the inner, because the ancients knew this technology existed. We've ignored
Past
it.
and present,
So now it
future.
takes us to go the furthest outreaches of technology to be able to see ourselves again and come back to return.
Widen the bandwidth.
Yeah.
I did the value. Right.
Widen, expand the worldview.
Yeah, it's
Live
like
who we
computers need
truly
glasses.
are.
We
Yeah.
need to see a little bit deeper. Like when I was young, I wore glasses and they used to call me Four Eyes. And now it's funny that I look at screens and I was like, screens actually need to be split in 4. They need 4 eyes. They're seeing it with 1, but we are still trained to think 1 is better than 0 as we're going upwards. But in this world, I'm trying to show that 1 and 0 have a common pattern, which is color. 1, which is white, is the addition of red, green, blue. And I'm mapping those to the body, red, the heart, green, and the mind, blue. These 3 together give 1. The beauty about number 0 is black, and black contains all of the color, as you know. And then white is actually the absence of that one color. So there's an actual language between 0 and 1 in color that we're not using right now to harmonize the web. We're still evaluating 0 versus 1, thumbs up versus thumbs down.
Right.
Star system. We were rating things as good as bad all the time, but that divides and it cuts to infinity. Color, there's no cut. If you look at 0 and 1, green is not better than red. Red is not better than blue. There's a way to like remove the judgment that we have of things with color that can create more peace in the world if we use technology with a new language.
Well, and as nature says, a healthy ecosystem has diversity, biodiversity.
Yeah.
Or you could also say black is the absence of anything, right? The void. You could say white is the all. You could the mirror image also works. Beautiful. Let's take some comments and questions.
Well, we do have.
I know we're running out of time.
Right. Well, we have hands
this is
up.
fun.
Tony's got his hand up. I also thought Karen said, "Will libraries become obsolete?" I mean, with this technology, what will
My father's a librarian.
Oh, yeah, really? It's like, I can.
No.
Do I have to go to England to go to the British Museum? Or no, I'm just going to stay at home and I'm going to walk through the museum. I'm going to pick up the artifact. I'm going to turn it around, look underneath it, see a presentation on the artifact. Maybe even the artifact's going to speak back to me in its native language or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't. There's no end to this.
There isn't, but there's also a grading as well, because the original Louvre has an energy frequency to it that can't be replicated in the digital world. So they can experience it, but it's different if you buy a plane ticket, use the money, the gas, go over there, do the whole trek. It's a whole different experience. But to have both available cuts down on all the people just curious about.
Beautiful. Well said. Tony, you're up.
Oh, well, thank you. Absolutely wonderful program. Many things I did not expect I've heard today. Much appreciation. One of my first concerns was that this is intensive of one sense, the sense of sight, our eyes. But we have other senses, of course. Hearing could easily be put in. It gets a little more complex with touch, with taste, and with scent. And are these things envisioned to be part of the picture or not?
Great question. And yes, absolutely. Because colorblind people, everybody asks me, if this works on color, what are you going to do about colorblind people? I'm mapping mind, heart, body to the chakras. So mind, the 3 chakras, the 3 here, and so 7 in total. And then I'm mapping those 7 chakras to the spine the angles of the spine, and then the spine is linked to sound, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, do. So there's a link between sound and art, where as we grow and create the game, there'll be a visual experience, but there'll be an auditory experience as well too. So people can have the sound healing from the quadrant that they need, or the center that they need, if they're colorblind, and they can still feel it. And if there's no sound or visuals, there will be other ways, but it should open up the full path of possibility to healing for anyone.
Yeah, there's.
Oh, please go ahead. I was going to say, scent, for example. This could be a very interesting one to project. Yet I understand our biggest memories are from that we smelled in our life. We remember that more than anything.
Yeah.
So there's some importance here, and of course touch and taste. And how do you replicate a fine dinner with wine pairings, for example?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What my thought is that we'll start to see movie theaters convert to having like the scent machines that can put out scents. Like you see at Disney World, they're already doing these things. In the Avatar ride, you've got scent integrated, you've got haptics with the little thing that you ride. There will be haptic suits that help you feel touch and feel the sense of touch. Smell will also, you could probably in the future buy a little scent machine. They sell them for like restaurants and retail. They have smell machines. So there will be more technology that is created and evolved to be able to bring you fully immersive. I think also when we get to like the holodeck area, my vision is to have one in Treedom, to have a space that is a holodeck set up to where you could go and it literally experience anything in your imagination in one place.
So there'd be scents already produced that would release at a certain time or something. Mm-hmm. We knew the producer of in Seattle, he was putting together Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and he wanted to put chocolate smell release at the certain times. We have a friend that has, oh my God, he bought a Star Trek generation
He bought
set. Yeah. And his
next generation
home movie
set.
Theater vibrates, when there's action. It's time to, and so people are trying to add, but how would you do that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
You have to package scents, or how do you stimulate the note?
Well, I mean, let's go a step further. How about human intimacy?
So I have to say, like, all of this is so that we don't have to go there. For me personally, it's kind of like the reason the human senses are the way that they are is because the design is perfect. All I'm trying to do with computers is for people that are very, very rational and are running in their blind spots, creating industry and business, to hit that mirror to see why they're creating what they're creating. So we can go back to curating smell and the art of smell and touch and all these other senses by people that are doing that with Mother Nature, with like real elements, curating it properly. Not necessarily, I'm not that interested in the simulated tech that's coming out to diversify smell. There's enough smell in the world. There's enough, there's so much to explore already that I'm like, the only way they should create that is not only way, but I see it as like, if the senses bring them back to being human and their main mission, vision, purpose in life, that they make their lives a vessel of service to wherever they're at, not just to explore, like the exploration to be connected with their heart centers and their mind centers and their contribution.
I would add too, there's a show on Amazon Prime called Upload. That might be a good one if you haven't seen it, but they have a little scene in there where the guy dies, he gets uploaded to this metaverse for his retirement. And then his wife is still living and she's got to go and get this suit to they can have, intimate relations. I think we'll also see, I mean, if you look at the industries innovating, the sex industry is one of the biggest innovators. So you'll see full body avatars that if you have a long distance relationship, you can't be with your partner, you could have a full body model of them and then have haptic suits and have that communication with your real partner. And there are other, sort of things you can do in the intimacy
Believe me, that will come online.
Yeah, that's good.
Haptic meaning touch, the sense of touch. I just have to say really quick, the sense of smell, because it's so tied with memory and experience, can be really interesting. So I woke up the other morning and I smelled my father's cigar. He's long gone. And I'm like, Paul, why do I smell Esther's cigar? And you said,
I had a dream that night of me smoking cigars, and I'm thinking, why am I smoking? But
how did I pick that up?
Yeah, it was weird.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So it's interesting how we get input into our senses from who knows when.
It was part of the ritual of sitting down with Laura's father is to have a cigar. Tony, thank you.
If I could ask one more thing.
Okay.
Perhaps I missed this, but this wonderful presentation you showed us, is this available?
We can make it available.
So
we can send you
the
link.
initial idea is I built this map, and I was going to start like slowly doing these interviews to share it with people. At first I was like, I'm going to sell it and put it out everywhere. And eventually that is the goal, because it's kind of like a unifying map. Anyone that takes it to any metaverse, they can organize their stuff according to the human psyche.
Yeah,
it's like a universal map.
Make a game of it.
I like that. I mean, if something
yeah.
I could use and get, I'll go out and buy an Oculus.
Yeah, Tony, I'll certainly get you a copy. We can connect and talk after this, and I'll.
Thank you very much.
Content worth metaing.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
JP Funk. JP, you said you'd like to also ask a question, if you could, please. I'll turn your yeah. There you are.
Hey, JP.
Hey, JP.
Hey, how you all doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
clearly. Thank you.
Hey, hi, G and Krista. I really appreciate your presentation. I have a little bit of a history in tech. I was in gaming in Austin, Texas, in simulation and computer game development for like a solid, 10, 12 years. And I guess in 1999, when I started at Digital Anvil, Microsoft, and then I saw the movie The Matrix, it was kind of like the future kind of came into into a coalescence. And the future I was envisioning wasn't the one from the movie, although the movie was kind of reminding us like how people were plugged in and being used as batteries and stuff like that. Those dystopian type of sci-fi movies always, a lot of them tend to kind of take the negative trend of like, oh, the robots are taking over, or, like Terminator 2 that you discussed. So what's your vision of your interaction in the metaverse? And I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not going to go too much into that in your question.
Do you have a question though?
Yeah, you have to be, I figure you have some kind of spiritual foundation that's driving this quest.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear what that is, if you could share that with us.
Well, thank you, JP, for your questions. Yeah.
Thank you, JP. Sure. Krista, do you want to? Yeah. All right. Okay.
You start.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay. Me, it's very simple. Everything is connected. And I have a form of synesthesia where I can see color and light, this map in my head. So when people argue, I usually see for example, when someone accuses someone else of having an ego or a large ego, what I'll see in their psyche is kind of where their ego is not comfortable with what the other person is doing. So I'll see kind of like a black hole being activated by the other person's frequency. So this map that I've seen, to me, is like we're all connected. And we just can't see it because our body is perfectly designed for us not to see the map. Or we would be seeing invisible threads everywhere. It'd be horrible to do work and to get everyone working. So in a lot of ways, the metaverse and the point of all of this is to simplify technology. If it was up to me, you'd pick up your phone and you wouldn't put in your passcode. You wouldn't have to remember a passcode. It wouldn't scan your face and take your face and say, now we have your identity. You would only be putting 3 colors in. You would be putting green, red, or blue. And you'd be telling this device, I need some blue, I need some green for my heart, or I need some red for my body. You press only 3 buttons. It wouldn't care about who you are or your identity, and it would go and fetch those things for you through the networks that are built. It's meant to simplify life so we know less about each other and more about the people we want to get to know.
Reminds me of the woman who will give you a tone. She'll analyze what tone you're giving off, what frequency, and then she'll supply the missing tone to you to help you balance.
Yeah.
In a similar kind of application.
It's created, if it was up to me, we would have space from technology. We would have this moment to pause in life, and we wouldn't be trapped by our money system or Cartesian time. We're all stressed out trying to time ourselves for Cartesian time to do things that we're supposed to do without knowing where we're all going.
Yeah.
I say we already have that technology within, just
We
activate
do,
it.
and more people need to know that.
Yeah.
Hey, G, I wanted to go ahead and offer, I've been working on soundscape design off and on for about 10 years after getting out of animation. And so I have this way of kind of like connecting with nature and the sound. So if at some point you need some sound for your project, please, hit me up. I'd like to offer that for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah. And I would add, JP, to answer that from a spiritual perspective, I think what we're doing now, I think it's part of natural evolution in this game that we've set up for ourselves. So it may be a little bit, I've been accused of being idealistic, and I'll own that, but I believe naturally that we will, because of these technologies and the ability to understand each other and see beyond and see the destruction we've already done. I mean, we've got history and we've got recorded history to go back to. So as more and more people awaken and have these spiritual awakenings and these experiences, they'll start to look for these tools to better connect and then co-create. And when we have the opportunities and the games that are so fun and exciting and are giving us these colors that we're missing in this other reality, then we'll naturally come together rather than what we've been doing. But I think it was just part of our storyline, part of our hero's journey, is we had to have all of this conflict. I was trained in value selling, which is a sales technique. And they say that every decision is an emotional decision, and that people don't make changes necessarily because things are good for them. They make them when the pain is too, intense. So I think we're getting to that point of the pain being intense enough, and the nexus of technologies, the convergence of all of these tools and the creativity, and we're raising a whole generation that's native to the tools. So we have to, one, make sure that we're incorporating all of this ancient wisdom, guidance, technology, so we don't lose it and go the way of, the Atlanteans or the, past, whatever,
Parlay all that into the game. I need one for the Dark Night of the Soul. Wouldn't that be a fun one to get yourself out of? Hero journey, we're all going to have one or two.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
And I appreciate the fact that you're talking about spirituality in a very universal way, all encompassing. It's not a specific tradition from a specific culture that's specifically owned or appropriate to that culture. And that's sort of the foundation of this institute, is looking for those universal connections of the human experience in the field of consciousness and spirituality. And so
it's going to bubble up again and again and again. Doesn't matter the format.
Right.
It's just going to keep bubbling up.
It bubbles up.
Why not into this?
Right. And G, coming from the culture, your birth culture, I mean, there's such a heavy, intense tradition of spirituality, and there's the whole Vedic tradition and all of it goes with that. And yet I love the fact that you're rising up like a flower out of that, and still I'm sure that's within your soul, it's within your DNA, but also you're still maintaining that broader,
making it a universal language.
Making it a universal. Yeah. Thank you,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Laura's
Thank you.
better.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was inevitable, because I mentioned I had done ayahuasca when I was 31, and with all these different plant medicines that I started exploring with afterwards, including modalities transformational experiences where there were no substances involved, like communication courses. When I left them, I still found the people that did them say that their thing was the best thing, or
Right.
that you just need meditation, you don't need anything else. You just need
Right.
sound healing, you
My
just need
God is the
you
better
just need
God.
mushrooms.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of them and just saw that they were all different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And at some point, we're going to be doing these like our own recipes. We're going to become cooks of our own psyche, of our
Right.
own
How
mindscape.
about the body's own inner pharmacopoeia? Let's not forget that one.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
the most exquisite one of all.
Yeah.
exactly. All the different forms that when we use our own, the minimum needed, breath work, posture, sound, dreamscapes, even communication.
Yeah.
If those can produce healing, they're always better than doing the ones where we have to use up matter and energy.
And
So
like
We're
Laura,
gonna travel to the ends of the universe and back just to find out
Just to
that
find
we're
ourselves.
already home.
Yeah.
It's like Dorothy. We're already home.
But we're
been
going to
home all
enjoy the
along.
journey and have fun as we do it.
as Laurie said in the chat room, all wisdom comes from the earth. There are no borders.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
We have a
So
couple
beautiful.
hands up here.
Oh, Bernie, did we not see Bernie?
Bernie.
Who
Bernie.
we thanked at the very beginning for introducing us
Yeah.
to G and
Bernie.
Krista?
Yeah. Talk about synchronicity.
There you are. Hello.
There he is.
I just thank
There
you
he is.
personally. Yeah.
Oh, still on mute.
Yeah, unmute still. Yeah. There you go.
I can't help talking about synchronicity, but boy, it's been great to hear both of you like do your duet here. And visually, it's a wonderful presentation, both of you, kind of doing the dance you've got. So it's been a pleasure to see you and hear how you're thinking in a way that I hadn't heard before. It's nice to get it repeated. And you like to say the invisible threads, and that's one of your lines. And I came up with that one in the Coincidence Project, the invisible currents connecting us. And I like to think that one of the ways we do that is through synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. And of course, I've asked you this before, and maybe I want to hear how it happens again. And Krista's told me too, but one of the things that just we heard about is a cigar. A cigar sometimes is just a cigar, according to his Sigmund Freud, but it may have other meaning. Yeah. That your two minds are connected, Paul and Laura, as I've been able to try to say to you when we were talking. I mean, you've got your own duet going, so you've got this twosome doing a foursome, and it's a wonderful thing to watch. And that's bringing some minds together just in this way. As Krista tries to be able to tell us, we can connect with each other in these 0-1 ways, which make it really easy for us to have this conversation. But my question, again, as I love to ask the two of you, is wherefore meaningful coincidence in the metaverse, especially in regard to illuminating the hidden currents that unite and connect us?
Thank you, Bernie. Shall I go with this one?
Well, I'll say quickly. Yeah. So we met through our book club, where I was actually in Florida, and so Southwest Florida. G was in Vancouver, BC. So the polarity, first of all, from being all the way across the continent, and then realizing how much we had in common underneath how different we look, as avatars here. I think that was one of the really interesting parts of the synchronicity. The other part is I had just gotten divorced and had done some manifesting of the type of partner that I wanted in my life. And I wanted someone who was really spiritually connected, who was into personal development and growth, and would do yoga with me and would help me evolve my own thinking and path. And that, led me to
that up pretty well, didn't you?
Definitely did. And we've been exploring in the metaverse and definitely have had many coincidences, but you can talk a little bit more about the coincidences in the metaverse.
Thanks. Yeah, for me, the coincidence was hearing about book flow 3 times that one day. I was part of another club, Singularity University, And 3 of the members just said, hey, you should come to book flow. So I showed up that night and I was mapping Maslow in 2D and everything. And they were working on Maslow. And so I screen shared and I was just like amazed with this new community. And so I went the next week and Christa popped up on screen. And I was just wondering, where are all the futurists? Where are the people wanting to make a difference in the world? And she had her future advisory board. So I wrote down her name to contact her later, and she was adding me on LinkedIn at the same time. And that's how we reconnected right there. So that's one coincidence.
Riding the same wave. Yeah.
Yeah. And to speak to the invisible threads and currents, I prefer invisible currents to threads that I initially had. And that's thanks to you, Bernie, because I truly believe there is an invisible current around us. And we've been calling it currency for now, which is the material manifestation of the heart matter. It creates all the same things as the archetypes do, but it's one half. It's used to divide. And now we finally have a world, a metaverse, where we can go and see the invisible currents that are running money, that are running underneath our economy. And the one way to snapshot or to see these invisible currents is with color, is in spatialized, is in a unifying map, so we can verify whether they're the matching colors. And the beauty about art and the metaverse is you don't have to be exact. With color, you can be approximate, and you can say, this synchronicity happened to me and it opened up my heart by this much. And another person can say it opened up my heart by this much. And 2 people will see the image and they'll go, that synchronicity had the same effect for them. They don't need to go and measure what the millimeters of the heart range were to know that people were connected through a color. So that's what it opens up, is that we can now map our synchronicities. We can map our coincidences. We can map the things that are non-local, that are abstract. Before, we had to measure them to make sure we can guarantee something for someone. Now we can measure, we don't have to measure them. We can just say, this is a feeling you might get. I don't know how much, but you're going to get a feeling. Try it out.
The other invisible currents or threads that I saw in your presentation was relational, where you were connecting, moving from one space to another and connecting this all up like a interactive mind map.
It is.
And you're saying that this impinges this and this and this. I think the relationships are so interesting. These currents of currency are really threads of power and influence and life force and meaning and shared perception, right? So this is really the currency by which we live. Currency, money is just a storage siloed, siloing it, storage to be spent later.
Exactly.
Really so.
Just one other thought on that currency piece in the metaverse and with blockchain and cryptocurrency, we have the ability to create our own currencies. So for example, in Treedom, in the Metrieverse, we'll have a tree coin. And by being able to create your own currency, you are also able to create what it can do and what people get paid for. So you could actually pay people through currency that you create to pay attention, to come to, to visit this place, that then they could have synchronicities with other people who have at least one thing in common. They care about the earth, they care about trees, they care about sustainability or spirituality. And that's going to increase your likelihood of finding people that are like-minded and that you may have more coincidences or synchronicity with.
Or connections.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that way you can, with your own currency, that will also help to raise the actual overall availability of currency, which raises the overall net worth of all people. And because you can access the metaverse from anywhere, you can actually access these worlds from smartphones. So as we increase the bandwidth, the technology, you don't always have to have something on your head to get into these spaces. And that will also lead to being able to spread more wealth around the world. So
Yeah.
You know, and in the interview that I did with you, G did his separate one with you, Christa did a separate one with you, Bernie, I thought that maybe there's a way, I mean, our interest was if we can create in your metaverse, why I was so intrigued to talk to G and Christa, a metaverse that could maybe display what we see and experience in this alternate reality, which in our mind is spirit, life force, the universal intelligence, the collective, whatever that force is that creates in the spirit, the language of spirit, through soundscape, through iconography, through symbology, through gesture, through color, through ancestors, through animal spirit, through all of this. It creates a storyline. There are lessons imparted. And I thought, well, if we can show that, could we not maybe create that synchronicity of meaning and connection, maybe not just within our own minds, but spilled out into a metaverse, three-dimensional, multi-dimensional experience in a sequential way, because it takes you on a journey.
Exactly.
Could we share that? And then is that another means to impart the lesson?
Induce this alternate.
Induce that experience. Could it light up the brain
Sure.
in the same way that the actual experience in a trance state and alternate reality does for us experiencing
Through
it?
the posture,
Can we
yeah.
convey that? That was
instruction
what
manual.
intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Are we recreating in an outer technology the same experience? Can we convey that? And what would that produce? That's an intriguing question that would tell us a lot
that's a question-
about this process.
Yeah, I was gonna, and that's a question that obviously I want to spend more time with you on, both of you on in the future,
Yeah.
because this is something that we're
Yeah.
just opening up this idea in a new way.
In the experience that you shared with us yesterday, Christa, you heard somebody, I am the tree of life, I'm growing up. You said, I'm flying over a landscape, I'm seeing through the eyes. I mean, tell us, isn't that experience of...
Parallel.
Yeah, I mean, it has...
Oh, absolutely. I've, like I mentioned
Colors.
earlier, I've always had this vision to create a dream machine that would essentially read your brain waves and then create the images. There's a movie called Bliss with Selma Hayek
I
and
saw
Owen
that.
Wilson, and he has this thinkifier,
Yeah,
whatever,
it's
like it's the
draw
same thing.
vision.
So that's what I see is when we can have, right now it would be artists rendering and creation, kind of like a sketch artist that would create your vision of what you experienced, and you can have that play between you and that relationship between you, which I think is part of the work that we're doing at the integration agency, the Hanuman 11. But we also, I think, will have the ability to have AI actually create this to where you don't need to have an artist. You will want to have your own personal artist, but you can do things quickly and have these images appear, and you can kind of edit them just with your voice. And that's the technology, the AI coming in, the voice commands, and machine learning, all of these things kind of converging to be able to create that.
Oh yeah, that's the vision that wanted me to have the four of you meet. That's the vision. And for me, it's like a lot of things, like when you first do a metaverse auditorium, it's a lot of work, as I could see on one of the Clubhouse talks that you gave. The guy showed us how to do you go to the auditorium, but it took him a lot of effort to do that one. And the first one's the hardest one usually. It's the most fun because it's the most creative.
Yeah.
But for G and Christa to get a match with the, excuse me, weird stuff that goes on at the Cuyamonga Institute with those two people and the people around them, weird to the regular reality. But they're quiet about it, I've got to say. They're quiet, but I know from having listened to them that they get to places that are something like what, Christa, you're just describing, but even more, to be able to create in some way in your visual mapping, using your abilities, G, and their experiences to take them and to put them into your color map with the archetypes they run into on a regular basis, and the connecting of minds that happen regularly in their experiences based on connections to the past that they are connecting with, which is why they're here and trying to tell everybody about them, because they are deeply connected to the ancient wisdom in the way they are able to do the statue formations that create new spaces for them to get into, and to be able to have the matching between your minds and their minds, their experiences and your capacities, plus your own personal experiences, is a wonderful next step that I very much hope the four of you are able to take.
Well,
Oh,
thank you, Bernie.
same here. But
Thank
the
you.
fact that you can take something from such an ancient time and that eternal now that you enter into is also relevant and applicable and immersible today, that tells us something about the laws of physics that we don't have in our equation. It tells us something about the capacity of the minds. It tells us something about these extra dimensions, which is why we have a theoretical physicists coming up. We spend a lot of time with them. What are you finding out? There's fundamental bricks in our worldview that are missing, in our equation that are missing. Maybe this helps put us in, but our ancient ancestors knew them. And there's just something about this. You talk about a matrix. Yeah, this is a piece of that. Let's peek under the hood of reality.
And let's face it, the ancients used technology, whether it was putting sticks together to create fire, or whether it was the clapping of rocks to make sound, or whether it was
take a hand axe. It's exquisitely rendered.
Right.
We got to throw an atlatl. Even I could throw it accurately and at a distance. I mean, beautiful, simple.
And we get so excited every time we have this discussion, but when you look at even the structures that were built by the ancients and the amount of time and effort and specificity used, it's just tremendous amount went into that technology being developed. So we're at a new realm
That
of
same
technology.
genius then and applied to today, it's like the continuum. Yeah.
And anyway,
I think me too.
no, that's
Sorry.
good. Bernie,
We get excited about it.
Bernie, we had a wonderful discussion with Bernie that's available on our website. And
and thank you for what you've done for coincidence and synchronicity and the nuances of it. You just really
speaking of
open it
synchronicity,
wide open.
it was Carolyn who found Carolyn is in the room, who found Bernie and
Put
told us
Carolyn
about
on.
it.
Carolyn has her own interview
and
coming
then
up.
also I wanted to mention, and it was Tony who kept coming on and saying, I want to talk about synchronous. Are you guys going to have this discussion?
Tony.
Yeah, that was a year ago. He kept starting this pounding of the drum, saying, can we have this conversation? So we'll have a conversation. We have to find the right person
Now,
to
Carolyn
facilitate
found
it.
Bernie.
And I
Carolyn,
know. I said we, meaning we.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hands up too, but go ahead.
Thank you very much for finding me. But what I am delighted with is that I have been able, through Clubhouse, find G and find Christa, and be able to see as you talk with each other.
Thank you.
How so much good energy and ideas could happen between and among you. And that's the pleasure I have from the sequence you just described to my getting to you, to see the four of you together and being able to have the vague outline. It's vague for me of you, each of your contributions to what could be an immersion for lots of people into the way the world really is.
Well, thank you.
Beautifully put,
Yeah,
Bernie. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, in the chat room, they're already saying you guys need to have a second interview. This is not, we're not gonna be able to complete all the thoughts that are going on here. So we're gonna talk to you later about another time, and we're gonna get back together and do this again.
Yeah.
And
Such
Bernie,
a good idea. And
thank you. Yeah.
Go ahead.
you're welcome, and I got to get going, but I just got to. This is a beautiful tapestry that I'm seeing right in front of me with the four of you. So thank you very much for being you. And I hope
Bernie, thank you, man. Absolutely.
But before he goes, put Carolyn on for a second.
Ricky as well had his hand up.
And Jack.
We got a couple questions. I don't, Carolyn, did you want to say something, Laura?
No, I'm just so happy about all of this. But please,
thank you, Carolyn.
questions from wherever he stands.
Now there's a girl with a lot of synchronicity
Big
stories.
heart. This lady leads with the heart.
Yes.
Extremely intelligent, but leads with the heart. Yeah.
Aw.
Wonderful.
All right. Let's go to some more questions then. Bernie.
Thanks, Bernie.
Bye, Bernie.
Yeah.
Ricky or
See, Jack has his hand up, and and then also Ricky wants to ask a question as well. Jack, how are you? Let me see, where are you?
Good. Nice program. I'd like to throw out something. The Matrix was brought up a few times, and that was a pretty good movie, but overuse of bullets. I'd like to talk out my all-time sci-fi movie, Forbidden Planet, 1957, and that's about a visitation to a planet that's a million years, the technology is a million years ahead of Earth.
Wow.
And what these space explorers discover. It's the Academy Award-winning movie with no music, only sound effects.
wow.
They have the creativity in this movie is, to me, way beyond what they did in Matrix, even though it's a very good movie set. But just leave it at that. It fits in with what you're talking about. It's done 1957, so you're going to see Anne Francis running around in a mini skirt. But
Wasn't that the one where it was right out of Shakespeare, the plot? Is that the one? The Prospero character has created a monster that he doesn't realize is his own reflection. And
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, very fitting then. We'll definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Good point. And then
Because let's not do that. Let's not create the monster that is built of our own shadow that we cannot see. Let's illuminate this collective unconscious.
And,
that's one of your missions.
And Ricky also
to help
had
illuminate that.
Ricky, you want to ask your question as well?
Oh, you're muted, Ricky. Still muted.
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
And funny thing, Rick, he's reaching for it. We've had this discussion before. Ricky is a sound engineer, so he always gets a big kick out of the fact that he has problems. Zoom doesn't.
Paradoxes.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
He's going to communicate in color.
Okay,
with us.
wonderful.
Yes.
You didn't come on, Ricky, but
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Now I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say how much I appreciated that I was able to see your presentation today. It was fantastic. And it's really just so wonderful that you are partnering up together. And it was also just a great synchronicity that it was, in fact, Bernie that put you all you guys together. And this whole experience for me of being able to see Paul and Laura on a weekly basis, there's something to be said for those kinds of familiarity that comes with regular practice that is being used that technology is responsible for, and it's keeping me so buoyed with expectation on how to adapt to your not just adapt to your model, but participate with your endeavors and also your endeavors. And Laura and Paul, how wonderful they are able to be so unrestricted in how they bring in guests from every kind of form, which is also goes with your model. I mean, it goes with the model. It's the model. It's so cool. Anyway, I work with color in my paintings, where I allow the colors to be themselves. They're their own persons. You are right. You said the most compelling thing of anything, which was that blue is not better than red. Red is not better than green. They have such a beautiful. They are diversity. They are diverse. I don't know how to show this best.
It is.
Doesn't look that great. It's such a pretty little painting. This is a little teensy little model, and they're all cavorting. And believe it or not, there's only 2 of each color here, and there's 47 colors.
Wow.
So I do a number of paintings that are called geoscapes, which take data from the environment that I paint, that I want to make a painting for, and take technical data from the environment, above sea level, all of the things that affect what the shape might be. I use all the kinds of things that Kayumunga Institute has on their Sunday programs are part of my artistic practice in my paintings. So I just wanted to say what a total panic it was to be able to sit through and see your presentation, because that was, it actually produced a visceral
reaction
effect. And I'm glad you didn't go too far into the what's being happening right now in terms of how advanced some of these markets are by using AI and tech in delivering troublesome material to the planet, and let's say uncoagulated types of material to the consumers, because it also does involve the consuming practice of being a consumer and having these computers. Many blessings to you. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much, Paul. Laura. You are the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for those
All right,
insights.
I just have to say that, Laura and I can't take we tremendously appreciate all these compliments, but please understand that we stand on the shoulders of a magical woman who did so much work in foundational things to bring forth these kinds of ideas. And also, it's the community of participants.
Yeah.
If we didn't have this community that's come together,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody we interview is a recommendation from someone else. It's not like
And Tony's responsible for many more too.
our advisory committee has like 4 people from Tony. So yeah, we're very fortunate. All of
I
you
also want to celebrate color, because think about the natural world has some beautiful colors in it.
Yeah.
But the limited palette of our ancestors and what they were able to devise as paints. In the Renaissance, blue was magical and it's such a precious color from lapis lazuli. Think about the color that we're able to see today, and that we know from our trance states when we're awash in vibrant colors you can't even describe the names of. Colors, just the capacity of our eyes to behold pure color. And what a sensory delight it is. What an immersion it is. What a vibrational frequency upload it is. So we can enjoy color in ways that previous generations could not, I want to say.
You officially hold the record for the longest interview that we've done on these Sunday
just
sessions.
past the
But
minute.
we're not done
I had a
yet.
feeling-
John still has a question.
Okay.
I hope you don't need to rush off here.
No.
Okay.
John, let's get your question in before we start wrapping things
I
up.
finally broke Paul's time barrier.
Ugh.
Thank you so much for being here and for staying on, and I really enjoyed this conversation. And I was just wanted to ask a question. I've been hearing a lot recently about trauma study, and trauma seems to be so much in physiologically it seems like what people are realizing is that seems to be a paralysis or a hyperactivation of certain regions in the brains with lack of integration going on. And it seems to me in our Saturday things, there's an opening up of brain regions. But I was just wondering, in terms of what you were showing us in terms of moving through space, do you sort of see this as important, that to think of the mind in terms of a 3-dimensional space, so that you seem to be moving through this space, and so that we're sort of sensing and even seeing in terms of relationships in some sort of meta space? Is that something that you're developing? Is that deliberate?
Yes. Yes, absolutely, John. The main reason is that our eyes allow us to see forward, our ears let us hear who's beside us, and we can sense who's behind us, but we can't actually see our own human shadow, and we can't see all that comes with the human shadow, our own unconscious wants, desires that are motivating us. In this map, we have the ability to go and see what could be in our shadow, in our unconscious, and then change the motivations or the compulsions towards our actions forward. So in a lot of ways, it's there to slow down the human ego. I just see it as energy where the energy goes. I'm not downplaying the ego. I'm just saying the mind energy is an open channel and it doesn't have enough to bounce it back to itself if people don't have community or they don't have structures. So looking at it in a 3-dimensional way is the only way we can actually deal with the multi-dimensional traumas that are all around us now.
Yeah, and just to add to that, G is a
Thank you, John.
systemic constellations facilitator. So having that experience of really tapping into the field and seeing that work in real life has led to kind of recreating the field, in this metaverse, so that you can create your own little avatars in there and have them represent some of those positions or the effects of what those traumas could hold. And in my research of purpose, I found people with greatest pain often have the greatest purpose. So really the ability to reframe those traumas into the gifts and see that every trauma has a gift, whether it's that gift of insight or power or inspiration, whatever those gifts are. I think being able to visually see it and then having it affirmed by community. The spaces we're creating are really built for people to connect within and have that community, and then to take what you learn within it in the work we're doing with archetypes and seeing these light and shadow sides of each aspect of yourself, then can be taken outside and used in everyday life. So
we're all wounded healers in some capacity.
Yes,
absolutely.
well
Yeah.
Wow.
And the family constellation, the Hellinger work, oh my God, it's profound. Talk about generating a group field where interesting things happen. We need to spend more time on that one.
We can talk about Hellinger and systemic work next time for sure. Thank you, John,
Yeah.
for the
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Really insightful question. Yeah. So, gosh.
Final thoughts.
Oh, are we there? All right. Last call for any question or comment, or turn on your mic. But
No more questions or comments. Final
Okay.
thoughts from you and I and our guests.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tools are neutral. Let's make use of them. We're at this stage in our evolutionary arc, and we've discovered from various disciplines that this is an exciting time to be alive. There's so much potential that we didn't have before. Let's do something useful with it. Let's jump to the next stage. Let's create the world we all want to live in. Let's be an asset to the planet. Let's honor the web of life and our place in it, and celebrate it, and be be assets to the whole evolutionary game.
Yeah.
This is a precious time, a precious planet, a precious set of biocodes that we're swimming in. Let's just make the most of it.
Yeah. And we're passing off. We're passing off, generationally speaking. The children of today are growing up into this world that the metaverse is the universe that they live in. We're handing
native
off
tools.
The human experience is going to a place that none of us have been before.
Yeah.
But we're hoping with our prayers and with our direction here that it will be something that the positive will outweigh the others. And
And we've looked at all the various tools that are so much more powerful than words alone. But here we are trying to move the dial of our worldview through dialogue. And so I want to thank you both today and all of our community and everyone for participating. It's by stirring the imagination that we can figure out where we want to go, by pulling back to take better aim to move forward. Your final thoughts?
Oh, it's just been a wonderful conversation. I'm like I can turn into a lighthouse and just not stop talking about this. So I've had to shut up a lot and be quiet about it, and just being in a space where you're both so brilliant and welcoming and have created such an amazing community. I'm just happy that I was able to express here and be like to even have this conversation with Christa and like everything coming together. I'm really filled with gratitude. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yes. And I would add, I love the way that you talked about moving the dial with dialogue. And I'm hoping that this conversation has demystified some of the maybe fearful aspects of the metaverse, and also helped everyone to see that you don't have to be a technologist or a futurist or an artist to participate in building these new worlds, and you don't have to be a billionaire to create a whole new planet or a new community or civilization. So just taking part in these conversations, adding your vision of what you see as a perfect world, and always making sure that you're focusing on what are the positive aspects and outcomes that can come from our dialogue, from our conversations, and from the technology. Those are the things I would, just suggest to each of you is, take some time, journal out what you see as, that kind of perfect world, and then joining conversations. Clubhouse is a great tool as well. It's an audio app that you can join on your phone. There are conversations about the metaverse at 365, 24 hours a day. There's also, you can jump into these worlds, even if you don't have a headset, you can reach them on your screen. There's AltSpace VR is a good one. That's Microsoft's version. It's not decentralized like Decentraland or CryptoVoxels, which basically means that it is, owned by one company rather than distributed like the others. But get in, explore, and see what's out there and see what calls to you, so that you can contribute to really pioneering this virtual frontier and creating the age of abundance.
Empower. Let's have self-empowerment and adding our voice, especially us gals, because we've been quiet for too long. So
thank you so much for the long
work that you're
form
doing.
discussion.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And before you leave, let me ask everybody to unmute themselves and thank our guests for spending the time they did today to lay out this presentation. So please.
A great program. Loved it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No pleasure. Hope to do it again.
Bye.
Godspeed.